I'm sorry guys, but that whole plan to build the car super fast kind of got thrown out the window because I haven't been able to work on the car at all today until now, which is 9:30 p.m. Basically, I messed up timing and I went to go do a entrepreneurship speech at UCF today and stayed after for questions, and between that and the mega long upload, it kind of set me back a little bit. So now I'm just gonna do a little bit here and there, but I think to you guys still, since I'm ahead of the game with videos, I'll still be able to put a lot of stuff in each video. Now what we're about to do is probably one of the coolest mods on this car because it's practically free. With drifting, it isn't necessary. These cars have a decent amount of angle stock, but it is nice to have a little bit of extra angle to kind of catch you in case you're about to spin out, or if you want to enter a little bit harder or just be a baller. Before we can add angle, we need to identify our limiting factor. In this case, there's a little bump stop on the lower control arm that we can actually just take right out, and then there's also a stop that's on the knuckle itself. So if you look, when the wheel is turned all the way, it hits that bump stop. Now before I go do these little angle mods, I want to get a point of comparison, so I'm gonna put the camera directly underneath the wheel, try to put it in the same spot again after we do the mod, and then hopefully if I put the frames side by side, you guys will be able to tell a difference. This right here is what you will have stock right from the factory. Still not terrible. Now to be able to remove the bump stop completely, we're actually going to have to pull the wheels off. And this little stopper just comes out with two 14s. I actually misspoke when I said that this was on the lower control arm. I actually don't even know if I said that at all. But anyway, I'm not too familiar with the names of the different components in this type of front suspension setup. But anyway, this stop will come out just with an adjustable wrench. If it gives you a hard time, you can also use a 19mm impact on it. But as you can see, we now have no bump stop there, no bump stop here. We already just a tad bit more angle. We've got quite a bit more angle now, and believe it or not, we're still not actually hitting anything in relation to those bump stops. Nothing's really touching. We've still got some room to play around in here. So what is the limiting factor? Not the best shot of it, but it's actually the rack bottoming out. In theory, yes, I could just do a rack spacer, which I conveniently have laying around. However, since these tie rods are old, I figure why not replace them with some nice upgraded aftermarket tie rods. They come with a bit longer threads and a spacer that just kind of slips on. In regards to the budget buildness of this build, I guess you could say this is a part that is unnecessary. You might be able to get away with rack spacers on stock tie rods, or there might be a company that makes a single rack spacer like this. This one is pretty expensive though, because this one's billet aluminum, but I'm sure that there's a budget option out there. Feel free to comment below and help out some people in the description. I feel like that's something I should touch on real quick too. I saw a few comments of people saying like, oh, like you're cheaping out on the build. Why are you doing that when you don't do that with your car? And like I wouldn't view it as cheaping out. The whole purpose of this, like I explained to you guys in the beginning, I'm not trying to do a crazy build to compete with other people doing giveaway cars. I legit want to show you guys that you can create a very capable, very fun drift car on a budget. If I go and install a Wise Fab and a turbo on this thing, it's not gonna be relatable and it's not gonna help those people out there that really want to get into drifting, but might need a little bit of encouragement showing them that yes, it's like stupid easy, and yes, you don't need a very high budget. Taking off tie rods is pretty self-explanatory. We just slide the boot off. You might have a zip tie, you might have like a weird twisty clamp thing, depends on who played with your car before. So we shall remove the boot. Actually, I lied, we do the front first. Very important and often overlooked. Make sure you use 2 wrenches. Yes, you can in theory get away with using 1, but it puts a lot of unnecessary stress on the rack and your tie rod ends, so we're gonna hold it on each side. If you don't use 2 wrenches, I'm not gonna tell on you, but when something breaks, I warned you. All right, we got it loose. We didn't hit ourselves in the face with an adjustable wrench. It's a good day. If you wanna be fancy, you can try to leave the nut where you had it or like put Sharpie marks on it, but chances are you're not gonna be able to get it right, so you're gonna have to realign it anyway. I'm sorry to be so pessimistic, but I've crushed my dreams so many times that I'm real, you know? I'm real. Somehow we're able to actually spin this one out by our hand, which is way easier than sitting there with a wrench, so sick. All right, once we get it out, we can move the wheel out of the way. Look at that. Some pliers on this little clamp. We shall squeeze her down, slide her out, and then we can get this boot right here down off the tie rod out of the way so we can be exposed to the underbelly of the rack. Now this, friends, is what is the most important thing that you don't want to not do right or wrong and stuff. So right in here, you want to make sure you hold the rack with an adjustable wrench, so when you're undoing it, you ain't gonna be putting any unnecessary stress on the rack, now you heard. Although we got this fandancy thing that we're gonna have to move out of the way so we can get access in there like we should. It's kind of a pain. I don't know if there's any real trick to getting it, but All right, to show you guys the difference real quick, here is the P2M tie rod, here is the stock tie rod. First off, look how loose this is. This one's so tight. That's besides the point. If you compare, you can see how the aftermarket one has a bit more threads, which is very, very important because this rack spacer is going to go over it. And what essentially allows it to do is rather than this bottoming out on the rack, the spacer allows itself to go inside the rack so we can get more movement from the wheel and thus more angle. Of course, don't forget to put the boot on before you put this in the car. That makes life a little bit easier. This part can actually be a bit difficult getting the tie rod to go into the tie rod end. Usually I'll have a friend help kind of put pressure on the wheel, but I feel like if you are, if you're willing to be patient, what I can kind of do sometimes is like put a little bit of pressure with one arm on the actual wheel while I try to turn it. It usually takes a little while, but you can usually get lucky and get it started. Obviously be careful not to strip it, but you're gonna be putting so little pressure on it, it's pretty hard to strip it. There we go. You guys aren't ready for this. Now check out how much angle we get. Look at that, literally until the wheel hits. Check out how crazy that is. And in case you're wondering the secret offset or whatever, these wheels are 18 by 9.5 plus 10. And then I have this spacer, which I believe is 2 millimeters. It's thin enough where it still gives us enough of the hub to center the wheel. And it allows us just enough clearance to where we can go to full lock. And if you can see, there's still room where the wheel actually isn't hitting. And like I compress really hard and it still doesn't hit. So I think we'll be fine. Worst case scenario, I guess we could go to a 3 mil spacer and we'd have even more room. But that is sick. I gotta show you guys the before and after comparison now. Look at how insane this is. Insane. Now I'm still waiting on the true coilovers before I can align the rear. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna lower the car a little bit so I can get better access to the suspension. I'm going to lower the coilovers maybe about, I'd say about an inch because the car was sitting pretty high. And then once I know that it's at a good ride height, I'll then align the front end. We'll get all that extra angle. Whenever you're adjusting BC coilovers, it's very, very important that you adjust the height properly. Never adjust it by the preload or the spring up top. What you essentially do is loosen the lock ring at the bottom, and then the shock will just thread in. This is easy because you can actually just use the bracket just to rotate it around with your hand instead of sitting there with the wrench. I did a quick toe plate alignment with about an 1/8 inch of toe out. That's about what I run on my drift car, so I figured I'd give it a shot for the Z. Alignment stuff's tricky because everyone has a different opinion on what works better and what feels better, so I figure I'll start with what I know. When I align the rear of the car, I'll go a little bit more into detail about how to use toe plates, because being able to do an alignment at home is really convenient. So in case you're curious, this is basically what we're able to get for that cheap in terms of stock angle. There's clearly a decent bit of Ackerman, the difference between the wheels, they're not parallel. I like how that feels. But this is sick. This is literally as much angle as we have on our S13s, and it cost us the cost of those tie rods, which obviously you guys could do it way cheaper. If you guys are in this modded car world, chances are you already know that when you lower a car, it sets all the suspension and arms out of whack, so usually you get a bunch of funky toe, you get camber, and you have to go and get an alignment. See, the problem is though, with the height that we want to have the rear of this car, we will essentially be forced to have camber. We can get rid of that camber with a camber arm, but we won't really be able to fully get rid of the toe because there's only so much adjustment on these stock spring bucket toe arms, whatever you want to call them. So this gets kind of tricky since this is supposed to be a budget build. Wouldn't adjustable arms kind of be considered going a little bit above and beyond? Yes, however, because this is a budget build and because whoever's using this, I want to make sure they get the full life of the tires that they'll be buying to go and drift on. It's really important that we have a proper alignment. I actually like to use a tad bit of positive camber so when the car squats, it has a perfect tire contact patch and just a little bit of toe in so the car grips and pushes forward while it's in drift. Here I have the ISR Pro Series arms, same arms that I have on my car and Nicole's car. Insanely great quality for actually fairly cheap. But obviously the issue is, if we delete that spring bucket, we don't have a spring, so how is our suspension going to work? Conveniently enough, Marco was able to stop by and bring me some parts. So BC does sell a kit that's a true coilover for the rear if you do want to do the adjustable arms, like I planned on doing, but I was stupid and ordered the wrong kit. So Marco, if someone else is stupid like me.
This is the rings and the spring and the plastic, so it doesn't make rattling noises.
So you can buy this stuff separately from BC. What do they just call them up or call like a vendor or whatever and then they can order them?
Yes, you can either ask through your vendor or ask us directly. We do have a tech department, and they can send this stuff to you. We stock everything.
So conveniently enough, if you guys aren't already familiar with it, whenever you order BC coilovers, you can fully customize your setup.
Even better, if you ever get into an accident, God forbid, or any kind of stuff, you can replace your shock cartridge or your spring or your lower mount alone, because we have each individual piece at a really cheap price. So it's actually cheaper than even if you had stock stuff.
And if you're in Orlando, it's like probably only 15-20 minutes away from you. Interestingly enough, BC is kind of how I met Taylor and Marco. I think I met you guys there like a long time ago, and then you helped me fix my SR when I broke my rocker arm.
Rocker arm, yeah.
Good old days. Now we got these VQ things.
Sick.
You like it?
I'm so jelly.
It looks a little bit better in person. It's not as...
So good.
Thanks, man. Marco's got a silver G, so we're like twinning now.
It's similar, but the actual wheelbase on these is a lot shorter. Like
Really?
miles shorter. Yeah, mine is a 104 and this is like 90 something.
Was yours a 4-door?
Yes.
Oh, the 2 doors are the same wheelbase, right?
The 2 doors are the same wheels
Gotcha.
as my G, but not as the Z.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah, they're long. The G's are long.
I always thought they were the same wheelbase, just different bodies.
No, they're all different.
All right, so to take this apart and add in the spring, Marco said all we have to do, take 2 wrenches up here, very simple. Assuming this comes off, this slides off, spring goes on like so, and then preload's the only thing that I might have you just guide me with to make sure I don't mess it up.
You don't need much preload. Preload is kind of crazy to explain because these springs are linear.
And if they're linear, preload shouldn't really matter
It really
because...
doesn't matter, exactly.
However, you got these suspension conspiracy people that still think it matters because they think that even though it's a linear shock, as it compresses, it changes.
Exactly. To most of us, we think, oh, you're just losing stroke because you're compressing the spring and you're going to get coil bind closer than someone else. But
I mean, it was evident on Nicole's car because her car had a bunch of preload, and even though they were linear springs, the car rode way stiffer than it did when we took out the preload.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it makes sense that at a certain rate, once you start compressing the spring, it probably loses its linearity. Is that a word?
It is now.
Okay. Don't make fun of the clutter, okay? It's normally not this messy. Yeah, Taylor was telling me this is like dumb simple, and I was like, oh, there's probably something I can mess up or something, but this actually does seem like dumb simple.
Well, some people just don't know, like right now, you're trying to fit that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, what am I gonna do?
You gotta take it all off.
Oh, boy.
But it's not hard. Just give that a little tap upside down. Deek.
Okay.
Everything just comes right off. You can leave that.
This will just kind of... That's really cool that all the stuff is like modular. That's the word.
Yeah. I love aftermarket suspension, and I love the fact that our stuff is like all the same numbers and all this stuff. So you can like get cartridges from like technically, if you know, another car that is a better measurement for your application for whatever you're doing, and it would work because all of our stuff is the same 53 mil shock body and you know, same everything.
Yeah, I was actually pretty surprised how much, I don't know if you'd call it stroke, but compared to my S13, how much the suspension actually compresses.
On the Z?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Why is that?
With the 5 is going to compress a good amount too because it's a lot softer. You're going to get some good squat. Yes, in my opinion, yes.
So the car should have a little bit more grip.
This is where that matters. When I say in my opinion, because everybody's butt is different.
Yeah, suspension's one of those things like people argue all day, and then Chelsea DeNofa will come in with some backwards logic that makes sense and somehow works, and everyone's puzzled. It's true, right?
It is true.
It's true. Chelsea's got the craziest theories.
They work for him.
People are gonna think I'm like talking crap about Chelsea. I like Chelsea. He's
Chelsea's
like
cool.
a suspension wizard. I feel like the difference between Chelsea and a lot of people is Chelsea just like tries it, where a lot of people are like theoretical. You know what I mean?
Agreed. He puts it on there, tests it, and then he does something else and changes it, peels it out. Other way. There's like a little here. You see it? There's like a little. See, it's like a little lip.
So just a little lip.
You don't have to hammer it.
Oh, it just kind of sits on there?
Yeah, well, the car puts it in place. Uh-oh. Upside down.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh. How you know this?
One is that goes to the top. That's the collar for the...
BC custom coilovers.
Okay, and then see this side is smaller than that side, and that side's supposed to sit perfectly inside the inner diameter of the spring.
And where does this go? On top?
Right there, and the other thing goes on top. Yes.
Like that?
There you go. Yes. Your hand's in the way.
It just chills like that?
Yep. See, now that sits perfectly inside the spring, so the spring doesn't like,
woo! So what I'll probably do is impact this on first. There was no washer for this, right?
No washer, no.
Okay, so I'll impact
that
this
is
on.
the washer.
They told me to impact the sun, guys.
Yes, 17 mil. Hold the, there you go. Ah, you're good.
For compression, to keep the spring from moving around.
Yeah, lay it down.
Just a little bit. Alright.
So what you want to do is you want to tighten the top ring. That works too. The top ring to the point where the spring doesn't move, like with your hand.
Like so the spring doesn't spin with your hand?
Correct. You don't want any rattly noises or anything like that.
So just so you guys know, I say this all the time, but a lot of people think that's how you adjust height. Don't adjust height by this part. Your coilovers will come already with the set preload. The actual shock threads into the body. Is there suspension, Marco, that actually you adjust it based on like this point or no?
Yes, there's like old style, old school stuff.
I swear like I had some Racelands on my E46
yes.
that you adjusted like that. They didn't have threaded bodies.
Correct. It's a cheaper, it's just better cost for production, so it comes as cheaper. So it works to a certain degree. If you compress it too much, you're actually applying too much pressure on the shock.
Yeah, it changes. Again,
everything.
Like we were saying, even if it's linear, as you're making it lower, it's getting a little bit stiffer.
Correct.
So tight. I feel like the rule of thumb should.
If you can't do it anymore with your hand, you're solid.
Okay. See that Taylor's getting all complicated with all the numbers and stuff. You just been like, get as tight as you can with your hand.
It works, and then put the.
But I think that's a bad basis though, because you got people like Alberto.
That's not preload. That's not preload. This is the beginning of preload. Now you're gonna put Now you're gonna put the other collar down. Your hand's in the way. Lay it down, and now grab your spanner wrench. All right, so now.
Locking it, or are we gonna compress it more?
No, yeah, you're gonna actually preload it now. So this you put that to like right hand tight right there.
I understand, and then we're gonna turn this, and then we're gonna have some sort of measurement.
With your left hand, you're gonna hold the shock body and this lower ring
so
like this,
spin.
So it doesn't spin. It stays in place. And then with the right hand, you're gonna move the upper ring. Oh, make sure your lower one doesn't move because that's your that's your measurement. You know.
Yeah, I know. How much are we looking for here?
So, the easiest way to do it is 2.5
Is that like the
millimeters,
thickness of this?
and it is literally the thickness of this wrench.
Hey,
so you just do it until the wrench fits in between the both of them. But if you want to like get technical, then you got to bring out a caliper and like.
I actually bought a caliper. It came in really handy for like when we were doing some of the engine stuff, so I bought one just to have it. Look at that, BC Racing custom coilovers.
We even give you a preload tool.
Look at that. All right, now we're good. Just lock them down.
Yeah.
And never touch them again.
Basic.
Ever. Thank you, Marco. I appreciate your assistance.
You're welcome.
Marco, plug your channel.
Nah, we're good.
You don't want to plug it?
No.
Drift Happy TV. Go follow him.
No, I need to post more. I need to improve.
Well, this is your now you gotta post.
Oh my God.
Go hound Marco until he starts posting.
My computer.
It's easy to get lazy. It's easy to get lazy.
Well, my computer kind of messed up on me, and yesterday I bought one. So
sick.
We'll see what happens.
Big things coming.
I don't know. Don't pressure me.
Just because I know there's going to be someone in the comment section that says something about this, yes, it is technically upside down. No, it doesn't matter. It's the same. It's just now the numbers are upside down. Can you verify?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a linear spring. It doesn't matter.
You guys got to laugh at me like you did when I stripped that nut yesterday and didn't even realize it's because I was tightening it instead of loosening it. And everyone in the comment section noticed.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I do dumb stuff a lot. That's what makes me me. Unfortunately, I haven't really been able to put the time into this car that I wanted to, and it's kind of turning into more of an ongoing project, which I didn't really want. I just had to run so many errands. We just said goodbye to Nicole's close friend, Brittany, that is moving over to Guam with her husband, who's gonna be stationed out there, but I don't know. I'm just glad that I kind of went gung-ho with doing everything in the first place with this car, because it kind of let me stash up on video and clips, so. We're probably gonna be back to real time by the next video. So we'll actually be removing this entire assembly. Ow. The problem with these spring buckets is mainly that this little adjuster, the way that it works, you turn this nut and this washer will basically let you move it very slightly, but not enough when you lower the car to properly get the right toe, especially once you adjust and get the correct camber. So by removing it, we're gonna be adding adjustable arms that will give us a better range of movement. Just very simple, 2 bolts there. And then the camber arm will be replacing this guy right here. It is kind of tricky to get this bolt out right here because it hits the sway bar, but I can verify for you that you can get it out without removing the sway bar, so don't bother doing that. What I did on the other side, I just kind of twisted this arm to allow the bolt to kind of go up, and I was able to get it right just barely over the sway bar and get it out of there. I believe this is the Pro Series camber arm. So this giant ugly thing is getting replaced by this pretty ISR spring bucket delete toe arm, whatever it's called. And then this camber arm will basically go up like this. I already have this side done if you're curious to see what it looks like. Did my good old trick where I do the other side first before I film, so I'm not stumbling around with the camera and I can actually like focus. What I did on that side that seemed to work quite well is basically adjust both arms to similar lengths that the factory stuff is, so it will install easier and then make my adjustments from there. Seems weird looking at myself, like my face is actually pretty clean right now since I washed it, since we just went and visited Nicole's friend, and normally it's covered in grease, you know. I think these gloves just have a lot of grease in them, so every time I like touch my face, then I get dirt on it. Remember though that because of the way that these are designed, that if you have them set up in different spaces on each side, you're obviously going to have different lengths on your adjustable arms to compensate for the difference. I imagine that some company makes delete washers that just perfectly center it so you don't have to worry about it moving around, but for now I just basically locked it in super tight, and then I guess you could in theory use this as an extra alignment tool if you wanted to not mess with the adjustable arms at all. If you remember what it looked like before, you see we now do not have this big external spring with that giant spring bucket. We've got this adjustable arm, we've got this adjustable arm down there, and we have the nice BC true coilover setup. If you are curious, I think I mentioned it before, but BC does sell these true coilover setups right out of the box. They'll also sell you the parts if you have the other setup and want to do a true coilover conversion. As much as I don't like ending videos without some sort of climactic, drifting, cool clip ending or something special happening, it's pretty late, it's like 1:30, and I think I'm gonna call it a night. Aligning the rear end of the car with the toe plates is gonna take a little bit of fiddling around, and probably will be helpful to have someone else here, so aligning the car with the toe plates in the rear is gonna take a little bit of fiddling around. I gotta replace a few of the studs back there, so I think I'm gonna end it out here. Just as a reminder, if you guys haven't seen any of the other videos, this car is a car that is being raffled off, given away, sweepstakes, whatever you wanna call it. For every $10 that you spend on my website, lzmfg.com, it gets you one entry. So if you spend $50, that's 5 entries to win this Cream Z plus a set of Cosmos wheels, drift spares, plus $1,500 cash. To increase your odds, we also have 2 other prizes, a full set of Cosmos wheels in your specs and a set of BC Racing coilovers in your specs for whatever car you want. Real quick stuff that would be pertaining to this video. Got to give a massive shout out to BC for helping me get those parts, Marco for helping come over and teach me how to do that quick conversion, and to Injuku for helping me get the parts that I needed for the tie rods, the angle setup, and of course the ISR arm. So the car's looking good. It's getting pretty ready. I don't want to give away the plans too much, but I will let you know that I did test the stock handbrake. I adjusted it just with a 10mm right by the ashtray, and it locks up phenomenally. The original plan was to not do a hydro in the car and to show that you can make a stock handbrake work well enough to have fun and go drifting. Still might do a hydro, I don't know. Definitely gonna do the bumper tuck in the next video, and then probably start focusing more on just like dialing it in rather than the bigger stuff. But anyway, I hope you guys are enjoying these videos. I'm not really a fan of working on cars, but it was important to me to do this myself. That way I could show you guys that might not have much experience with cars. If Adam can do it, I can do it too. As you guys know that I like normally mess things up and do things the hard way, but it's fun. It's just getting a little old. I actually fixed my car up today too. I don't think I mentioned that in the video. I played with my angle setup a little bit. I'm excited to show you guys how much more angle my car has. Fixed all that bent stuff from last weekend, and hopefully we can get some testing on these cars done soon. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you tomorrow.